The night the stranger collapsed at her doorstep, the wind stopped breathing. Not a whisper, not a cricket, not even the restless palms dared to sway. And in that silence, destiny knocked. The village of Umuikoro lay tucked between dense forests and a restless river that elders warned remembered secrets. At sunset, the land glowed in burnt gold, but once darkness fell, shadows stretched longer than they should, as if something unseen was reaching. In this village lived a doggo, a woman spoken of in two ways, blessed beyond measure and too soft for this wicked world. She was no older than 25, yet wealth had wrapped itself around her like royalty. Her late father, a respected trader of ivory beads and rare fabrics, had left her storehouses filled with grains, chests heavy with gold cowries, and land that stretched far beyond the horizon. But it was not her wealth that made people talk. It was her heart. She gave without hesitation. To widows, to orphans, to strangers passing through. No one left her compound empty-handed. And every time she gave, the elders would shake their heads. A river that forgets its source will dry up, they warned. But a doggo only smiled as though kindness itself was her inheritance. That evening, the sky bled crimson before surrendering to darkness. A doggo had just finished sharing food with a group of traveling laborers when she heard a dull, heavy thud right outside her gate. Her maidservant, Ifioma, froze instantly. "Madam, don't open that door," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is how evil spirits enter." But a doggo's brows drew together with concern. What if it is someone dying? The wind suddenly hissed against the walls, as though warning her to stop. Still, she stepped forward. The wooden gate creaked open slowly. And there, lying face down in the dust, was a man. He was unlike anyone she had ever seen. Tall, unnaturally so, with skin that seemed to hold a faint glow even in the darkness, like moonlight trapped beneath flesh. His clothes were torn and stained, but even in ruin, they spoke of wealth, deep indigo fabric embroidered with golden threads. His face was calm, too calm for a man on the edge of death. Yet something felt wrong. His shadow flickered, though no flame burned nearby. "Help me lift him," a doggo said firmly. Ifioma hesitated. "Madam, please." "Now." Together, they dragged him inside. The moment his body crossed the threshold, the oil lamp went out. Through the night, a doggo stayed by his side. She cleaned his wounds with herbs from the village healer, fed him drops of palm wine mixed with crushed leaves, and wiped his burning forehead as fever gripped him. Hours passed in silence. Then suddenly his eyes snapped open. Piercing. For a moment, a doggo felt as though she had fallen into them, like staring into a well with no bottom. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice low, almost echoing. "You are safe," she replied gently. "This is my home." He studied her for a long moment. Not with gratitude, but with something else. Something she could not name. That night, Ifioma could not sleep. She swore she heard voices coming from the guest room. Not one voice. One was the stranger's. The other was not human. It whispered like wind passing through dry bones. "You have been found. The chosen one is near." Ifioma pressed her hands over her ears, but the voices did not stop. By morning, the stranger appeared stronger. He introduced himself simply as Obina. No clan name. No origin. Just a name that seemed to carry weight on its own. He spoke little, but everything about him felt refined. He ate slowly, moved with quiet authority, and when he spoke, even the birds seemed to pause and listen. Days turned into weeks. A doggo found herself laughing more. Smiling more. And for the first time since her father's death, the emptiness in her chest began to ease. But the village did not share her peace. One afternoon, the oldest woman in Umuikoro, Mamankiru, came to visit. Her back was bent with age, but her eyes were sharp, cutting through illusions like a blade. She studied Obina carefully. Too carefully. Then she turned to a doggo. "Child, where did you find this man?" "He came to me," a doggo replied. Mamankiru's lips tightened. "That is what worries me." That night, she pulled a doggo aside, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are spirits that wear human skin," she said. And there are princes who are not meant to be seen. Adago frowned. What are you saying? The old woman gripped her wrist tightly. If he asks you for anything at all, do not give it freely. Adago pulled away, offended. He is not like that. Mamankiru's expression darkened. That is exactly what they want you to believe. Days later, as the sun sank low and the air grew heavy, Obina approached Adago. His expression was serious. Adago, I must leave soon, he said. Her heart sank. So soon? There is something I must reclaim. He stepped closer than ever before. And I cannot do it without your help. Adago nodded without hesitation. Anything. There was a long pause. A silence that pressed against her chest. Then he spoke. I need your fortune. The world seemed to stop. All of it. Ifioma cried out immediately. Madam, no. This is madness. The villagers gathered quickly, their voices rising in anger and fear. He has bewitched her. He wants everything. Mamankiru's warning echoed in Adago's mind. Do not give it freely. But then she looked at Obina. Into those deep, unreadable eyes. And something inside her chose trust. That very night, Adago did the unthinkable. She gave him everything. The gold, the lands, the storehouses. All handed over to a man whose past remained hidden in shadow. As the final agreement was sealed, a strange wind swept through the compound. The same unnatural silence returned. And Obina smiled. Not warmly, not gratefully, but knowingly. Thunder cracked across the sky. And in that instant, Adago saw it just for a moment. Not the man before her, but something else. A figure crowned in shimmering light, wrapped in power that bent the air around him. Not a stranger. Not a wanderer. A prince. Before she could speak, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Obina's voice deepened, no longer entirely human. You have done what no one else dared. Now the truth cannot be hidden any longer. The shadows around him began to rise, twisting, stretching, alive. From the distance, Mamankiru's voice tore through the night. Adago! Run! He is not just a prince, he is the gatekeeper. The earth split open with a deafening roar. And from beneath, something ancient began to rise. Something that had been waiting, watching, hungry. The wind returned in a violent rush, carrying whispers that did not belong to the living. And as Adago stood frozen, her heart pounding against her chest, she realized. Giving away her fortune was not the sacrifice. It was the key. The darkness below surged upward. And everything changed. The ground did not stop trembling. Adago could not move. The crack before her widened slowly, like a mouth opening after a long sleep. From within it, shadows stretched upward, thin at first, then thicker, darker, and alive. The wind roared through Umuikoro. Women screamed. Children scattered. Men who once stood boldly now fled without looking back. But Obina did not move. He stood at the center of it all, calm and untouched, as though the chaos bowed to him. Adago's breath came in shallow bursts. What have you done? She whispered, her voice barely audible beneath the storm. Obina did not look at her immediately. Instead, his gaze remained fixed on the opening earth, his expression unreadable. Then slowly he turned. You gave it willingly, he said. His voice no longer sounded entirely human. It carried a weight and depth, like something echoing from far below the ground. Adago's heart tightened. I trusted you. The pause. And for the first time, just for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt. Not regret. Something older. Behind her, Ifioma stumbled backward, nearly falling as another violent tremor shook the land. Madam, we have to run, she cried, tears streaming down her face. But Mamankiru did not move. She stood firm, gripping her staff so tightly her knuckles trembled not from fear but from recognition. It has begun, she murmured. Adago turned sharply. What has begun? The old woman's eyes locked onto the rising darkness. A debt older than this village, older than your father's wealth, older than even the river itself. The shadows surged higher. And then, something emerged. At first, it was only a shape beneath the darkness. Massive. Slow. Watching. Then two burning eyes opened from within the void, deep red, ancient, and filled with a hunger that did not belong to the world of the living. The air dropped cold. Every sound died instantly. Even the wind stopped. Adago staggered back, her voice shaking. What is that? Mama Nkiru stepped forward slightly, her voice low but steady. That is what he guards. Adago's gaze snapped back to Obinna. You said prince. Mama Nkiru's voice cut through the fear like a blade. He is. But not of men. Silence fell heavily between them. He is the gatekeeper. The word echoed. And suddenly, everything began to make sense, and nothing did. Adago's mind raced. The fortune, she whispered. What does my fortune have to do with this? Obinna's expression hardened slightly. It was never about gold. He stepped closer to her. Each step felt heavier than the last. What you gave was not just wealth. The ground trembled again, harder this time. The shadows behind him pulsed. You gave permission. Adago's eyes widened. No. Her voice cracked. No, I didn't. You did. His voice was calm. Final. The wealth you inherited carries a binding older than you know. It was sealed generations ago to keep that beneath the earth contained. Adago's breath caught in her throat. My father. Yes, Obinna said quietly. Your father was not just a trader. The truth struck her like thunder. He was a guardian. Memories flooded her mind. Her father's warnings, his strict control over the wealth, the rituals she never understood, the nights he stayed awake watching the horizon. Of it. Suddenly clear. You broke the seal, Mama Nkiru said, her voice heavy with sorrow. You handed over the last key. The creature beneath the earth rose higher now. Its form began to take shape, vast, shifting, made of darkness and smoke, yet heavy enough to shake the ground with its movement. The glowing eyes fixed on Adago. And for a moment, she felt it. It knew her. Ifioma screamed. It's looking at her. Adago couldn't breathe. Why me? She whispered. Obinna's gaze did not leave her. Because you are the last of the bloodline. The creature let out a low, thunderous sound, not quite a roar, not quite a voice. But something in between. Something that felt like a call. The shadows around Obinna began to move faster now, circling him like loyal servants. But his face remained calm. Controlled. Bound. You control it? Adago asked, her voice trembling. The pause. I hold it. Mama Nkiru stepped forward sharply. For now, she warned. The ground split further open. Flames flickered deep below, casting terrifying light upward. The creature pushed closer to the surface. The world itself seemed to strain under its presence. Adago felt her legs weaken. So what happens now? She asked. Obinna's eyes darkened slightly. That depends on you. Silence. Even the shadows seemed to pause. You open the gate, he continued. You can still choose what comes through it. Adago shook her head, tears forming. I don't understand. You will. Suddenly, the creature surged upward violently. The earth exploded outward. Villagers screamed as debris scattered across the compound. The sky darkened unnaturally, as if night had swallowed the last light of day. Mama Nkiru slammed her staff against the ground. Adago, she shouted. The choice is coming. The creature's massive form now loomed halfway out of the earth, its presence suffocating everything around it. Its burning eyes locked onto Adago again. This time closer. Hungrier. Obinna stepped forward, placing himself between her and the creature. For the first time, there was strain in his expression. I cannot hold it much longer, he said. His voice cracked slightly. The shadows around him flickered wildly. Adago stared at him, her heart pounding. Why me? She cried. Why is this my burden? Obinna looked at her, truly looked at her. And this time, there was something different. Not cold. Not distant. But heavy. Because you chose to give, he said quietly. And in this world, every gift has a cost. The creature let out another deafening sound. The ground beneath Adago's feet began to crumble. Mama Nkiru's voice rose again, urgent and sharp. Child, listen to me, Adago turned, barely holding herself together. You must decide now. Decide what? The old woman's eyes burned with intensity. To seal it or set it free. Everything stopped. Just for a moment. Adago's breath caught. Her heart pounded. Her world hung on a single choice. Behind her, the abyss roared. Before her, Obina struggled to hold the impossible. Around her, her village stood on the edge of destruction. And then, the creature moved. Faster than before. Reaching. Rising. Breaking free. Obina shouted. Adago! The creature lunged. The earth split wider as its massive shadow surged forward, swallowing the ground in darkness. Its burning red eyes locked onto Adago, closer now, hungrier. Adago! Obina's voice tore through the storm. He stood before her, arms outstretched, his entire body glowing as waves of energy pushed against the creature. The shadows crashed against him like a violent tide. But this time they did not stop. They pushed harder. Stronger. Relentless. Adago's heart pounded wildly as she struggled to stand. Her legs trembled beneath her, but she forced herself up, her tear-filled eyes fixed on the impossible battle before her. Seal it or set it free. Mama Nkiru's words echoed in her mind like a drumbeat. Behind Obina, the creature roared, its form expanding, stretching, breaking through the invisible barrier inch by inch. Obina gritted his teeth. I can't hold it much longer. For the first time, fear cracked through his voice. Adago's chest tightened. Everything had led to this moment. Her father's warnings. The fortune. The stranger. The choice. Why me? She whispered again, but this time, the question felt different. Not fear. Understanding. The ground beneath her feet glowed brighter. The light from the abyss began to wrap around her ankles, then her wrists like threads recognizing their owner. Mama Nkiru stepped forward sharply. Child, your blood is the key. Adago looked down at her hands, trembling. The seal was never the wealth, Mama Nkiru continued. It was you. The world seemed to slow. Even the creature's roar became distant. Obina turned his head slightly, his glowing eyes meeting hers. And in that moment, everything changed. There was no manipulation in his gaze. No mystery. Only truth. I was sent to find you, he said, his voice quieter now, strained. Not to destroy you but to bring you to the gate. Adago's breath caught. You knew this would happen. Yes. A tear slipped down her cheek. And you still let me trust you? The pause. The shadows surged again. I hoped, he said, his voice breaking slightly, you would choose differently. The creature broke through another layer of his defense. A massive arm of darkness stretched forward, inches closer now. The air screamed. Adago closed her eyes. And for a moment, she saw her father again. His warning. His burden. His sacrifice. Then she opened them. And this time, she was no longer afraid. I understand now, she said softly. Mama Nkiru's grip tightened on her staff. Then choose. Adago stepped forward. Past Obina. And no, he shouted, trying to reach for her, but the force of the creature held him back. She walked toward the edge of the abyss. Toward the creature. Toward the end. The ground glowed beneath her feet, responding to her presence. The shadows hesitated, pulling back slightly, as if recognizing something greater than themselves. The creature paused. Its massive form is looming over her. Watching. Waiting. Adago raised her hands slowly. The light from within the earth surged upward, wrapping around her arm, her body, her entire being. She turned slightly, looking back at Obina. Every gift has a cost, right? She said. His eyes widened. Adago, don't. She smiled faintly. Not in fear. Not in regret. But in peace. Then let it be me. And she stepped forward. The moment her foot crossed into the abyss, the world exploded in light. A blinding surge of golden energy burst from her body, colliding with the darkness. The shadows screamed not in sound, but in presence as the creature recoiled violently. The ground shook with unimaginable force. The sky cracked with light. Adago's body lifted into the air, suspended between two worlds. Her eyes glowed. Her voice echoed not just as herself, but as something greater. By blood I bind you. The light surged again, stronger, pure. The creature roared as its massive form began to break apart, dissolving into fragments of shadow pulled back toward the abyss. Obinna fell to one knee, shielding his eyes from the intensity. A doggo, he whispered. The shadows retreated. Faster. Violently. As if being dragged back into a prison they could not escape. The abyss began to close. The cracks sealed. The light faded. And then, silence. The wind stopped. The sky cleared. The ground stilled. Where the abyss once stood, there was nothing. A doggo was gone. Ifioma collapsed, sobbing. Mamankuru lowered her staff slowly, her face heavy with both sorrow and acceptance. Obinna stood in silence. The glow around him faded. For the first time, he looked human. Days passed. The village slowly rebuilt. Life returned. But something was missing. At the center of the village, a sacred tree began to grow where the abyss had once opened. Its roots ran deep. Its leaves shimmered faintly in the sunlight. And no one could explain why. Obinna stood before it one evening, alone. Quiet. Still. She chose, Mamankiru said from behind him. He didn't turn. I know. A long silence. She saved everything, the old woman added. His voice was low. And lost herself. Mamankiru stepped closer, her staff pressing gently into the earth. Or became something more. The wind moved softly through the tree. Its leaves shimmered. Obinna finally looked up. And for a brief moment, the light flickered. A familiar presence. Watching. His breath caught. A doggo. The leaves rustled again. So, alive. And then, stillness. Obinna closed his eyes. A single tear fell. Far beneath the roots of the tree. Deep within the sealed earth. A faint glow pulsed. Not darkness. Not entirely light. Something in between. Waiting.
My dear friends, lovers of stories, if this story touched your heart, then you are already part of our storytelling family. Hit the subscribe button right now and join us here on Telltale Stories TV.